Boop boop. Boop boop. And we're back. It's late. But, we're gonna try and finish Hanada's route. If you have a little bit left over, we'll do it on Friday. It's normal hours. And then we'll start Yamazaki's route, because I forgot exactly how you start Chizuru's route. And then I looked it up and I'm like, oh. Well. We're doing that last. So, let's continue Hanada's route. And to put my microphone into place so that it's not blocking the text. Let's see. Hopefully that works. After suffering our defeat at the hands of the Imperial Army and the Furies, we returned to Edo. The yawns don't stop. All of us who had arrived at the mansion were tensely awaiting Kondo-san's imminent return. However,
原田組長、局長はいつ戻られるのですか？まさか我々を見捨てて新政府軍に下るつもりでは。
局長ともなるといろいろやることがあるんだよ。大使を集めたり、幕府のお偉いさんと今後のことを相談したりな。
Harada was quick to assure the panicking warrior, as if he had rehearsed the speech, but...
元はといえば、あの人が負け戦を始めたのが原因じゃねえか。殿様気分でふんぞり返って命令ばっかりしやがって。大使は将棋の駒じゃねえんだぞ。
Nagakura's angry diatribe made Harada furrow his brow in worry. Once more, Harada turned to face his men.
ちょっとそこの酒屋で酒でも買ってきてくれねえか。手持ち無沙汰だろ。
はい、わかりました。
The warrior sprinted out of the room and Harada quietly turned back to face Nagakura.
おい新八、さっきの言葉はいくらなんでもあんまりだぜ。幹部にあんな言い方されちゃ近藤さんだって立つ瀬がねえだろ。大使連中だって戸惑っちまうぜ。
俺は間違ったことは言ってねえよ。あの人の下手くそな采配で大使が犠牲になったのは本当だろ。
その辺はしょうがねえだろ。池田屋や金門の変の時とは勝手が違うんだ。近藤さんが新政府軍相手に指揮を取ったのはあれが初めてなんだし。
Dan! Hello, what is that? Coffee. That works.
最初から何もかもうまくできやしねえって。それに近藤さんもこの前のことを反省してるからこそ大使を集めるためにあちこち走り回ってるんだろう。
Did you just write your name backwards?
それがそもそもの間違いだってんだよ。
Oh no, you're writing backwards.
刀も銃もろくに使えねえ大使が何百人いたって意味がねえ。そんな連中をかき集めたところでこの間みてえに脱走されるのがオチだぜ。
それも一理あるわな。
Oh god.
近藤さんは大使が多い方がハったりを聞かせられるとでも思ってるんだろうが。
Harada's defense of Kondo-san was thinning, and Nagakura continued to vent his frustrations in front of their men. That is not the lookout you really need. Jesus. I hadn't gathered the impression that Nagakura was rinsing his hands of the Shinsengumi altogether, but rather it was because of his loyal commitment to the Shinsengumi that he became so critical.
俺は別にあの人に難癖つけて足を引っ張りてえわけじゃねえんだよ。
What? Dad, can you please write normally? My eyes cannot. Or rather, my brain cannot compute backwards. Thank you. It's you.
近藤さんが考えを改めてくれりゃ昔みてえに一緒に戦うつもりはあるんだ。だけどよ。
Nagakura's tirade continued, to which Harada watched from the side.
そろそろ潮時かもな。
Oh god. It felt wrong of me to speak out of turn, but all of their concerns, while understandable, were altogether foreign to me. After some time had passed,
ここに来るのもずいぶん久しぶりだな。
it goes Sleepy. That's how I feel.
ただいまと言っていいのかな。いや、お邪魔しますと言うべきか。
Ochamashimasu. I'm learning words. It was the first time that either Kondo-san or Hijikata-san had shown their faces around our compound. As soon as Yangakuro caught sight of Kondo-san, he marched up towards him and with a puffed chest. Why are you up at 2 a.m., Dan?
近藤さん、俺行って話したいことがあるんだ。いいか？
どうしたんだ、かしこまって。
二人きりで腹を割って話し合いてんだ。
Usually when it's 2 a.m., I'm going to bed. That's why I ask.
土方さん、隣の部屋使わせてもらうからな。
Hijikata-san let out a dejected sigh.
とうとうか。ま、いつかこんな日が来るんじゃねえかとは思ってたがな。
そうだな。近藤さんが目指してるものと新八が求めてるもんは今やまるっきり食い違っちまってるからな。
俺もなんとか歩み寄れねえもんか。近藤さんに探りを入れてみたんだが。
近藤さん、なんて言ってたんだ？
与えられた格式と名に恥じねえ人数、そして装備を集めて戦に臨むべきだ。
Oh my god, Dan.
新選組はもう浪人の集まりじゃねえ。名誉ある幕臣なんだからってのが近藤さん。
やれやれ。それじゃどうやっても落としどころなんて見つかりっこねえな。
Harada's shoulders slumped and he tilted his head up. Harada's shoulders slumped and he tilted his head towards the ceiling in contemplation. After giving it a moment of thought, he turned once more to ask Hijikata-san a question.
で、土方さんは今後どうするつもりなんだ？新政府軍の奴らは新型の武器を山ほど持ってやがる。対する俺たちは武器も旧式だし、幕府のお偉いさん方もまるっきりやる気がねえときてる。勝負事ってのは一旦負ける流れができちまうとなかなかひっくり返せねえ。あんたにはとっくに分かってんだろ。
Hijikata-san deeply furrowed his... I keep saying furrowed. It should be furrowed. Furrowed his brow in worry, pursing his lips as he considered Harada's cynical position. His eyes thinned for a moment before he spoke.
正気がねえわけじゃね
どんな作戦だ
Hijikata-san went silent. He seemed reluctant to take Harada's bait, either unwilling to open his argument up to scrutiny, or more likely afraid to admit he had none at all. He had none at all. Hijikata-san's eyes shifted nervously, and Harada looked concerned as he guessed what Hijikata-san was thinking. Yep. Sure, completely fine, Dan. Absolutely fine.
まさか羅刹隊の連中を使うつもりか。
I could have cut through the tension with a knife. Awkward silence hovered in the air until...
え。いや、これからは刀じゃなく洋式の兵器の時代だ。だからって羅刹の使い道が完全になくなっちまうわけじゃねえ。 あの体力や素早さはまだ使える。コードーさん、昼間でも動き回れる羅刹を作り出したって
When Hijikata-san mentioned the Furies, I jumped. My heart pounded relentlessly in my chest.
冗談はよしてくれ。ありゃどう考えても人間が扱いきれる代物じゃなかったぜ。
お前、さっき言ってただろ。
Well, if you say so, Dan, if that fits you, that fits you. I don't know how many I need. I have zero clue.
負ける流れができちまうとなかなかひっくり返せねえって。近藤さんを新選組を勝たせるためには手段なんて選んでる余裕はねえんだ。
Hijikata-san was speaking very directly, but even I could tell that he hadn't taken this position lightly at all. Harada offered no immediate response, perhaps also recognizing the challenge Hijikata-san was facing. Lurk. Harada kept his pale gaze fixed at his feet until he looked back into Hijikata-san's eyes once more.
言いてえことは分かった。だが、どうやってあの羅刹どもを仲間に引き入れるつもりなんだ？行動さんを抱き込む気か？そんな取引、どうやったってできっこねえと思うんだがな。
行動さんとは別の方法を使う。
As I wondered whom Hijikata-san had been referring to, he turned his cold gaze over to me. Hijikata! What is going through your mind, sir? His eyes were like sharp daggers, digging into my soul with an inspecting glance. I don't like this. Does this mean he wants...
おい、ちょっと待て。まさかこいつを利用するつもりか？
俺のやり方はよく知ってるだろう。新選組を勝たせるためなら俺は地獄にだって落ちてやるさ。
I felt myself shiver as his chilling words came to light. No, he couldn't. I stared back at Hijikata-san in desperation, but he was unmoved. There was no emotion nor doubt in his voice. In the past, Hijikata-san had gone out of his way to protect me from Sanansa's nefarious plans. But here he was, offering me on a silver platter to whomever could use me best. God. Harada was irate, jumping to his feet out of indignation. He seethed Hijikata-san's contempt, as if he were seconds from pointing a sword at his neck.
そればっかりは賛成できねえな。こいつをそんなことに利用させてたまるか。
Hijikata-san, however, wasn't going to back down. Neither was willing to budge, their eyes radiating with ferocity. This battle of wills was unsettling to say the least, and for a moment nothing could break the deadlock. Until...
もしこいつを羅刹隊に追いやるって言うんなら、俺はもう新選組に未練も何もねえ。
Ah, so this is his tipping point in his story. All right.
今すぐこいつを連れて出て行ってやるからな。
新選組副長としてそれは認められない。大気に背く者は離反者として処分することになる。
ああ？俺とやり合うってのか？あんたが。 面白い。やってやろうじゃねえか。
No, Harada, you can't! I rushed up to stop Harada when...
お前は下がってろ。ここは絶対に引くわけにはいかねえ。
Oh no, what should I do? I shuddered to think what they would do to Harada. Or even worse, what would become of the Shinsengumi? Hijikata-san offered a smug grin, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. This is like the most evil we've seen Hijikata, and I don't like it at all. My lord.
とはいえ、今幹部大使が離反したとなりゃ、大使連中も動揺するだろうからな。
Huh?
本来なら処分するところだが、多分新八と同じく友好的な利体扱いになるだろうな。
Holy
伊
shit.
藤さんの時みて。
If Kondo-san and Nagakura were unwilling to meet neutral grounds and reach a consensus, then most likely they would have no other choice but to let him leave the organization. At least this was the impression that Hijikata-san was giving me. Bye bye, Dan. Awoo.
そりゃどういう意味だ。俺はあんまり頭が回る方じゃねえんだ。言いてえことがあるんならすっぱり言ってくれよ、すっぱり。
今は俺がここにいるから三男さんもおとなしくしてるが、ずっとそばで見張っててやるわけにもいかねえからな。それに三男さんにしてみりゃ、お前らの意志なんて取るに足らねえどうでもいいことだ。今は思い切った行動に出ちゃいねえが、負けが込んで焦りが出てくりゃ、思いもよらねえ行動に走ることだって十分考えられる。
Fighting dirty?
例えば表向きはお前が鬼に連れ去られたってことにして羅刹体に閉じ込めるとかな。
A shiver crawled down my spine at the thought. Hijikata-san raised a horrifying point. Sana-san hadn't cared one bit as to whether or not I would comply with his request. All he'd wanted to do was give me an opportunity to come quietly until he took matters into his own hands. If, at any moment, the Shinsengumi felt their war with the Imperial Army reached a breaking point, then I would no longer have a choice in the matter, and I would simply become a pawn to his intentions. So what Hijikata had been suggesting earlier was...
なるほど。こいつを守るためには二人で新選組を離れるしかねえってことか。
Thank God!
あんたにはかなわねえよ、土方さん。新選組が何より大事って言いながら、よくそんな策を俺の前でベラベラ口にするよな。
世辞を言ったって何も出ねえぜ。それじゃ達者でな。
We've been blessed by Hijikata, which is weird. Without another word, Hijikata-san nodded curtly and promptly exited the room. Hijikata-san always kept his emotions close to the chest, never more apparent than in this moment. No one could ever call his pride for the Shinsengumi into question. As he undeniably poured all of his blood and soul into the group's survival. Which, to our surprise, wasn't the case this time, as he thought of me rather than his allies. A familiar voice interrupted our stunned silence.
ああ、出てってやるよ。もう付き合いきれねえ。あんたなんかに命預けられるか。
Nagakura stormed into the room, packing his things into a bag as he mouthed off angrily. Nagakura?
何を言っても無駄だからな。俺はもう二度とここには戻らねえ。これからは新選組幹部じゃねえ。ただの長倉新八として戦ってやる。
奇遇だな。俺たちもここを出ることになったんだ。これから先よろしく頼むぜ。
え
Suddenly, Nagakura stopped stuffing things into his bag and he blinked incredulously.
どうした？出ていくんじゃなかったのかよ。それともさっきの言葉はただのハったりか？
いや、もちろん出ていくつもりだけど。どういうことだ？えお前、いつ出ていくつもりになったんだよ。
いろいろ事情が変わったんだよ。な、千鶴。
だから、はいじゃなくて、俺にも分かるように説明してくれって。
Harada and I glanced at each other with wide eyes, working to suppress the giggle under our breaths. I can't hold back my giggle because that's just too funny. Out of the three of us, only Nagakura hadn't been clued in. Oh no, I gotta say goodbye. No. One day had passed, and it was evening. After spending the day settling our affairs, it was time for us to depart from the compounds.
それでは長倉さん、原田さん、雪村先輩、お元気で。
本当に行っちまうんですか？長倉さんたちがいなくなると寂しくなるってのに。
It still hurts because we're leaving Nomura and Somura behind, and I'm just like, no.
そうだな。飲みに行った時酔いつぶれた新八に感情を落ち着けて先に帰れなくなっちまうしな。
本当ですよ。
ちょっと待て野村。てめえそんな真似してやがったのか。
違う今のは勢いで言っただけだって。
Both of you take care, okay? Please send my regards to the rest of the men.
はい。今まで本当にありがとうございました。
As we made our way from the compounds, Soma and Nomura waved to us in the distance. Harada, what about Heisuke?
あいつには書き置きを残してきた。なあ、俺たちもしばらく江戸にいるし、お前も暇を見つけて手紙を書いてやったらどうだ。
I knew that, for the most part, a feeling of regret was unavoidable, but parting ways with people with whom I had spent years together made my heart heavy in my chest. I gazed into the dusky sky when we heard the sound of rapid footsteps approaching. Huh? Could it be Heisuke?
みんなあんな書き置きだけ残していっちまうなんてひでえな。しかも佐野さんすっげえ字が汚ねえから全然読めなかったじゃねえか。
いいんだよ。字なんてもんは書いて読めりゃ。
だから読めてねえって言ってんだろ。
Heisuke, will you be alright?
あ、何がだ？
なんだったらお前も一緒に来ちまったらどうだ。
Heisuke tilted his head inquisitively, scratching his chin in contemplation for a moment.
いや、やめとく。俺がいなくなったら三男さんますます歯止めが効かなくなっちまうだろうしな。
Damn.
そっか。
It pained me to say goodbye to Heisuke, but That he wanted to remain with the Shinsengumi was commendable, and I had to respect that. Forcing him to come with us would have done him no good. Well, take care, Heisuke.
Oh, mata na.
Not the Matana again! We exchanged our goodbyes and we resumed walking down the length of the trail. As we approached a clearing, Heisuke screamed from behind us. Harada and Nagakura had years on Heisuke, which made the thought of him dying before them a worrisome one. I shed a few tears thinking about it. Our departure from the Shinsengumi left us without too many options for lodgings, and so we went to visit an old friend of Nagakura's for the time being.
月見で一杯にかっせ。悪いな、新八。今回も俺の上がりだ。
くそ、また負けたか。やっぱり金をかけねえと本気が出ねえよ。少しでいいからかけようぜ。
何言ってやがるんだよ。んなことしたらお前を殺しちまうだろうが。
Jesus.
お前のことだから金が絡むとつまらねえイカサマをするに決まってるんだからよ。
A bell rang from outside our room, signifying that the sun had set and it was now evening.
そろそろ店が開く頃合いか。そんじゃ出かけることにするか。
お、そうだな。
そんじゃあ千鶴、俺たちはこれから飲みに行ってくるから留守番頼むぜ。
Oh. I stuttered in response.
どうした？
Harada's blunt expression caught me off guard somewhat. Oh, nannamanai. Try not to drink too much, okay?
新八はともかく、俺は心配いらねえさ。引き際は心得てるからな。
どの口が言ってやがるんだが。この間、酔っ払って道端の地蔵相手に因縁つけてたのはどこの誰だよ。
Have fun. Harada and Nagakura skipped out of the room, exchanging banter back and forth as they eagerly anticipated a night of bar hopping. That's the first thing they decide to do. Ever since we had left the Shinsengumi, our days moved at a pace that reminded me of our time spent in Kyo. Harada and Nagakura were carefree, no longer encumbered by the responsibility imposed upon them as captains of the Shinsengumi. Although I harbored some worries about how everyone else had been doing at the compounds, seeing how readily both of them moved forward with their lives gave me encouragement to think that I had made the right decision in leaving. But I couldn't help but worry if I had a role for myself in relation to how they chose to spend their lives. Their time. Their lives' time. Their time. Spend their time. Could I see myself living like this? Often left behind when they went on drinking escapades for much longer? In spite of everything, I need my water. There it is. I need to leave it up here. No. Don't fall. Stay right there. Okay. In spite of everything, Harada was the first person I could call upon to protect me, especially when it came to Sano-san's sneaky approaches. Harada always made time for our conversations, and together our lives had joy and laughter in spades. I could always trust him to treat me respectfully, which was far more than what I had deserved. My days with him are numbered. By remaining with them, I opened myself up to the threat of Shiranui or Kazuma kidnapping me. This was a chief concern of mine? I never heard chief used like that. Are they using chief here as in, like, major? Because it sounds better when you put major, like, this was a major concern of mine, knowing it could potentially put Harada and Nagakura at risk too. Instead of, this was a chief concern of mine, knowing it could potentially put Harada and Nagakura at risk too. I feel like major works better than chief. And more than anything, I couldn't shake the sight of father pulling the strings of his fury creations back in Kofu. Just what was father planning on doing with this army anyway? It seemed so out of odds with his character. That's so weird. I knew that, without question, Harada would join me to put an end to my father's experiments if I were to ask, but this had nothing to do with Harada, nor was it his responsibility to involve himself in this conflict. So then are we dealing with just Kazuma then? He, by all standards, was a man, a human. Harada had the experience and technique to mount an initial challenge, but how could he fare against an army of them? What if Harada were to end up losing his life in the process? I shook my head, haunted by the passing thought, and I wasn't sure if I could ever forgive myself for it. After a few hours,
富岡八幡宮に来てって
I heard Harada speaking outside.
それならこの道をまっすぐ行って3つ目の角を左に曲がって
I was so giddy to see him that I rushed outside to welcome him home. But fate had something else planned. Oh god, what?
なるほど。この地図にあるこの建物があそこの魚屋さんですか。ありがとうございます。助かりました。
この辺りは道が入り組んでるからな。初めてだと迷うのも無理ねえよ。
I eavesdropped on the tail end of their conversation, gathering that she had asked him for directions. But from where I was standing, it looked like the two of them were speaking playfully, veering on the side of flirtation. Harada was known for his charm, and it wouldn't surprise me if she had been wooed simply by engaging in conversation with him. But watching him converse so casually with her, my heart sank like a stone into my stomach. I wonder why. Why had this ache constantly plagued me?
しかしこんな夜遅くに女が出歩くのは危ねえぜ。一緒に行ってやろうか。
いえ、家人が近くまで迎えに来てくれてると思いますから大丈夫です。それじゃ本当にありがとうございました。助かりました。
The woman bowed and thanked Harada repeatedly before finally walking off into the dimly lit street. After seeing her back vanish into the distance, Harada finally noticed me as he turned around.
お、千鶴、ただいま。どうしたんだ、暗い顔して。
I was at a loss for words. My eyes started back and forth between Harada and the floor, and I could feel my cheeks tensing.
今の女なら道を聞かれたから教えてただけだぜ。
I know. I knew that's all it was. I knew that's all it was. But why? The pace of my breathing quickened, and soon my feet felt like roots had ensnared the ground. Ugh. The pace of my breathing quickened, and soon my feet felt like roots had ensnared the ground beneath me, trapping me from running away.
分かってんならさっさと中に入るぞ。夜はまだ冷えるからな。
At Harada's behest, the two of us re-entered the warm abode.
千鶴、悪いけど茶入れてきてくれるか。
はい。I did as instructed and slowly walked towards the kitchen in the other room. I struck the fire underneath the kettle, and for some reason, the memory of the scene from just moments earlier hadn't left me. Why was I so eager to dwell on these things? Why had my heart become so fragile, shattered by every doubtful thought? The answer, I knew, was right in front of me. Unlike me, Harada was no demon. He was human, and could live a reasonably normal life. Eventually, he would find a woman of his own kind to fall in love with. Together, they could bear a child and live a peaceful, quiet life in the solace of each other's company. Imagining such a future without myself anywhere in the picture was torturous, an ache for which there was no cure, and it was beginning to depress me. For Harada, I was sure, the future was full of bright possibilities, and his entire life was ahead of him. That is, as long as we were not together. I had to make it known to him. I couldn't bear the thought of Harada throwing his life away on my accord. Harada, here's the tea you asked for.
お、悪いな、面倒かけて。
No worries, it's my pleasure. I handed a small cup of freshly brewed tea to Harada, which still had quite the amount of steam. However, he hesitated before putting his lips to the cup to drink from it. No. Is something wrong? Is it too hot?
いや、いいもんだなって思ってよ。
Quaint?
酒かっくらって帰ってきた晩に誰かが家で待っててくれて、こうやって茶を出してくれる。かみさんがいるのってこんな感じなのかもな。まるで夢みてえな暮らしだよな。
Harada spoke so warmly, basking in the content of his cup of tea and comfortable lodgings. For whatever reason, my heart felt heavy. If Harada actually were to find his wife sometime in the near future, would he ask her to make tea like he had me? If that was what Harada truly wished for, then I had no business being in his way.
どうしたんだ、ぼーっとして。もしかして待ちくたびれて眠くなっちまったか？
Personally, no, Harada, as Chizuru has some problems going on. No, not at all. Say, what happened to Nagakura?
あいつなら飲み屋で古い知り合いとばったり会ってな。二人でもう一軒回るって言ってたぜ。俺はさすがに付き合いきれねえから先に抜けてきた。
そうか。Our conversation died off, and the only sound in the room was Harada softly slurping his tea. After taking one more large sip of tea, Harada eked quietly as he asked me a question.
で、今度は何を悩んでるんだ？
What do you mean?
今さら隠し事もなしだろ。お前、思ってることが顔に出やすいからな。患者なんて絶対にできねえな。こっちに来てから随分明るい顔をするようになったが、時々落ち込んだ顔して考え事をしてる時があるだろう。
Well, Harada was astute, enough to see that I had been lost in the swirl of my own thoughts, which stressed me greatly. For him to show concern over such a thing, the taste was bittersweet.
どうした？俺には言いたくねえか？頼りにならねえって思われてるんならしょうがないけど。
It's not like that. It's just... I stopped myself from continuing because if I said it aloud, if it became real, then all it would do was deflate the mood, ruining the positive atmosphere we worked hard to maintain. But I knew that eventually I'd have to speak with him about it, so it was only a matter of time.
もしかして好きな男でもできたか?
Well, that took one direction.
そういう話は正直言ってあんまり聞きたくねえな。
That's not it at all. Well, I couldn't bring myself to look Harada in the eye. But I spoke my piece knowing it needed to be done. I'm getting some water now because I feel like this is going to be long. You see, I've been thinking of leaving. Harada's eyes widened suddenly and his expression became stern as he listened intently. He took my claim very seriously, and he perked up to get to the bottom of why I may have felt in such a way.
どうしてだ? 何か気に食わねえことでもあったか?
No, it's nothing like that.
仲間をほっぽり出して新選組を出ておきながら毎晩飲み歩いてる俺たちに嫌気がさしたか?
No. Thinking back on it now, Harada's entire reason for leaving the Shinsengumi was... me.
高校を出た後どうするつもりなんだ? とりあえずそれだけは聞かせてくれ。
Well, I struggled to improvise an answer. I was planning to visit some distant relatives of mine.
へえ、どこの親戚だ?
Are we lying to Harada with a horrible lie? Harada saw right through me, parsing through my nervous lie with the cunning of a hawk. Going through with this lie was biting off more than I was ready to chew. He was pressuring me into coming clean, subjecting me to intense query. There's something I need to take care of. Please try to understand where I'm coming from. The man, whom I've known for years to be my father, was tunneling down a destructive path. Figuring out a way to stop him, let alone locate him, was proving to be an arduous task. Even so, I was losing him, and his wicked plans were becoming more realized with each day. It was selfish of me to ask Harada or Nagakura to partake in this journey with me to stop him. This time, there was no telling if any of us could make it back alive. An awkward silence fell between us. Harada looked downwards, tapping his toe anxiously upon the floor until eventually...
千鶴、お前、本気でここを出ていくつもりか?
How should I respond? Please understand. Please understand. The last thing I want is to cause even more trouble for the two of you.
とりあえず、さっき言ってたしなきゃならねえことってのが何なのか聞かせてくれ。俺には聞く権利があるはずだぜ。まあ、聞かなくても大体の想像はついてるけどな。
If I had told Harada the truth, then it was likely that he would object, giving me no permission to leave. However, I was in no position to leave either way. I had no other choice but to come clean. It's because of my father. As soon as I mentioned the word father, Harada sighed as if he'd already expected the answer.
やっぱりか。そうだよな。お前の性格じゃ、コードさんをあのまま放っておけるはずねえよな。 それを聞いたらなおのこと、お前を行かせるわけにはいかねえ。
Why?
お前一人で一体何ができるって言うんだ？傷が治るのは人より早いかもしれねえが、それだけだろ。刀も持てねえ、人も殺せねえ。そんなお前が一人になったところで羅刹に殺されるのがオチだ。この俺がそんなお前を放り出せるはずねえだろ。
Harada was right. I had neither the strength nor the willpower to take on the Legion of Furies, much less the demons. However, Harada and Nagakura weren't in a much better bleh. However, Harada and Nagakura weren't in a much better of a position. I only put them in further danger every day. Why? Why can't you just understand? My anger was seething, and I wanted to grab the sides of his head and shake my point into him. I don't want either of you to get involved. I can heal myself, which should be more than enough in case of emergency. The image of seeing Inoue being shredded apart by a flurry of bullets was still so clear in my mind. Yamasaki, too, was killed due to complications following the Battle of Toba Fushimi, contacting a high fever and passing away in his sleep. Bullets devastated the human body, and no manner of medicine nor hope existed to counteract them. It wasn't hard to imagine that such a fate could easily befall both Harada and Nagakura tomorrow. I dropped onto my knees and begged Harada. Please, just let me leave. I would do anything to repay you. Please, just tell me you understand. Tears came flowing down my cheeks. My forehead pressed against the ground, and Harada muttered softly as he watched me writhe.
なんでそんなに堅くななんだよ。俺にはお前を守る力なんてねえって言いてえのか。曲がりなりにも新選組幹部だった俺にそんなこと言うのはお前くらいだぜ。
No, it's not like that. I'm more than aware of what you're capable of, and you've saved me so many times in the past. But it wasn't that I doubted him. It was that I was afraid for him. There were certain things we couldn't control, and being human had its limitations. It would be a fool's errand for him to put his life on the line all for my sake.
何を言われようと、お前をここから出すつもりはねえ。泣きながら土下座なんてしても無駄だ。顔を上げろ。
What should I do? Why was it such a challenge to express how I was feeling to Harada in a way he could understand? I searched within myself, looking for some way to talk some sense into him. Soon I began to seethe with anger, teetering on the edge of resentment. Why can't you just get it? You keep talking about that life you want, don't you, Harada? Then why don't you just leave me alone? Please live the life you've always wished for. Don't let me keep holding you back. Just as the words left my mouth.
そんなの決まってんだろ。惚れた女が死んじまうかもしれねえってのに黙って見過ごせるかよ。
Harada's arms were tightly wrapped around me, and I was suddenly enveloped by warmth. What was going on? Did Harada say what I think he said?
俺は確かに鬼でも何でもねえ、ただの人間だ。だけどな、それでも 惚れた女を命がけで守りてえって気持ちは持ち合わせてるんだぜ。
His grip tightened. Suddenly, it almost became difficult to breathe while being held in his embrace. I pushed his chest back gently, fighting to get space. But it was futile, and in reality, I had been craving this contact for so long, to be wrapped up in his arms. All of my anxieties that I had so needlessly dwelled upon melted away, as if I had the answer to my worries this entire time, but didn't know where to look. The woman you love. Whom are you referring to? Harada blinked in surprise. He continued to hug me tightly as he lightheartedly chuckled. He continued to hug me tightly as his lighthearted chuckle tickled my ear softly.
ここまでされて気づかねえって。お前どこまで鈍感なんだよ。周りに気ばっか使ってるくせに自分のこととなるとからっきしなんだな。
What do you mean? Harada pressed his lips together, and he gave me a stern look before answering.
俺が惚れてるのはお前だよ。じゃなきゃ昔の仲間と別れてまでお前を連れ出したりしねえだろ。
All this time, I had nurtured this crush, this dream in my heart for so long, hoping it would escape everyone's notice. But in reality, I had resigned myself to the fact that it was never bound to happen, and so I gave up. Why? I was vexed. Under any other circumstances, I would have been elated from what he was telling me, but instead, I was sobbing uncontrollably. At some point, resisting Harada's snug hold around me was no use, and I leaned closer against him. I mean, I'm a demon, though. I know I can pass for a human, but I'm not. No matter how hard I try, I'm a monster. I don't have the option of living the same life as everyone else. Harada tenderly brushed his palm across my cheek, comforting me with delicate care.
前に言ったじゃねえか。誰が何と言おうと、お前は普通の女だって。お前がどう考えてようと、俺が添い遂げてって思ってるのはお前なんだ。それとも俺なんかと共に生きるのは嫌か？
Somehow every word Harada said had me utterly entranced, and I fell deeper and deeper for him. My heart fluttered in my chest. I realized suddenly that this was the assurance I'd needed all along. So, it's okay for me to want this? To say that I want to become your wife and live the life of an ordinary human woman? I've been fighting these feelings for so long, but it was useless. You're all I think about. My enamored thoughts rose to the surface, coming to life after being suppressed for ages.
お前と会ってから随分経つが、今まで一度だってああしてこうしてって言ったことねえだろ。本心を隠してばっかりいると何をしているのか自分でもわからなくなっちまうぞ。言ってみろよ。お前はこれから何をしたい？どうやって生きてんだ？
Something that for so long I thought only existed in my dreams was coming to fruition. His words touched my soul, taking my fantasy and allowing me to run with it to my heart's content. I think it's a lot to ask for. I was blubbering as I spoke, tears dripping into my mouth as I tried speaking up. Only with the strength of his amber eyes could I compose myself to say what my heart desired most. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Through puffy eyes, I told him the truth, and unloading this burden off my chest made me the happiest I felt in my entire life. This catharsis was all-consuming, however, and it seemed every tear in my body left my eyes. An endless waterfall of tears came streaming down my face, almost to an exhausting degree. My eyes began to sting as I wiped them. I became embarrassed thinking about how much of a mess I had surely looked, but Harada gazed at me lovingly, holding me dear against his chest as I poured my soul out to him.
悪かったな。言うのが遅くなっちまって。俺、口がうまい方じゃねえからよ。言わなくてもわかるだろうなんてのは男の身勝手な考えなんだな。
No, this is more than perfect. Hearing you confess your honest feelings to me was more than I could have ever asked for. Harada stroked my hair softly with his coarse hands. His palm was covered in calluses, perhaps as a result of training for so many years with his spear. Even if they were rough to the touch, he had such a gentle way with his hands. I felt safe in his embrace.
行動さんのことに関しては今すぐには動けねえ。
Wait, are we still actually going for? Oh god, what are we doing?
シンパチや世話になってる人たちへの義理もある。だからな、この件は少し俺に預けてくれるか。
I nodded quietly. Dedicating my life to him meant believing in him, even when my anxieties otherwise got the best of me.
それでもお前のことは必ず守るからな。だからずっとついてきてくれ。
I don't know if I just heard a firework outside or something. Hold on. It might be. Okay, I will. Oh boy, March. Soon, after Harada shared this intimate moment, we learned that Nagakura's friend, Haga, was forming a group known as the Seikyo Corps, serving as his chief. Both Nagakura and Harada were offered to serve within his ranks as commanders. Although barely any time had passed since they said farewell to all of their closest comrades, Harada and Nagakura were working to carve a new life for themselves, forging a path that was more closely aligned with their morals and beliefs.
そろそろ飲み屋が開く頃か。羽賀さんのとこにでも行ってくっかな。佐野ももちろん一緒に来るんだろ。
いや、今日は気が乗らねえし、やめとくぜ。昔馴染み同士の会話に割り込むのもなんだしな。
佐野、最近付き合い悪いよな。もしかして女でもできたのか。
Woman, you say, huh? Nagakura's question was innocuous. There we go, that's the word. Nagakura's question was innocuous, but I couldn't help but cower nervously from off to the side. I reached my hand over my chest where I felt my heart pound restlessly, and I blushed. Harada, on the other hand, snuck a playful glance in my direction before answering Nagakura. Ooh.
まあな、いるよ最高の女が。
Harada was beaming as he answered with pride. This boy.
なんだって、適当に言ったつもりなのに本当だったのかよ。どんな女だ。
さあな。
なんだよ、隠すことねえだろ。やっぱあれが俺に内緒でこっそり色町に通い詰めてたとか。それとも近所の可愛い女の子でも口説いたか。くそー、色男は得だよな。
シンパチ、お前がモテねえのはどうしてか教えてやろうか。近くにいるやつの仕草とか態度とか、そういう細かいもんを見過ごしちまうからだよ。
え？なんだよそれ。どういう意味だ？
やっぱ分かってねえか。まあいいや。とりあえず今日は留守番しててやるから、好きなだけ飲んできたらどうだ。
おう、そんじゃ行ってくるからな。今日も朝まで飲んでくると思うから先に寝ててくれていいぜ。
Nagakura skipped out of the room merrily, whistling as he anticipated the full evening of shenanigans ahead of him.
あいつやっぱり分かってねえぜ。トンカンもあそこまで行くと見事なもんだな。お前がこんだけ分かりやすい態度をとってるってのに。
Harada mentioned it so nonchalantly, but earlier when he called me quite the lady, I couldn't help but blush, and I instinctively looked away in order to deflect attention from myself.
なあ、千鶴。なんで顔真っ赤にしてんだ？
Because it's obvious, isn't it? I mean, after everything you just said.
あんなことって最高の女ってやつか？俺は思ったままを言っただけだぜ。
He knows exactly what he said, too. I know that, but hearing it said right in front of me is something that I'm unfamiliar with. I can't help being shy. We've got another one already, holy crap. Suddenly I felt Harada's thick arms wrap themselves around my narrow shoulders. I gotta learn to speak, man.
恥ずかしいだけか？
Harada's face was nestled in my neck. As he drew me in closer, his breath tickled me from my ear down the length of my spine, and his whisper coaxed me into a soothing trance. My cheeks, like moments before, flared up. Huh?
さっきの言葉を聞いた感想だよ。恥ずかしかった。ただそれだけだったのか？
Harada beguiled me with his cool, seductive voice, and I gasped as the feeling of his mouth meeting my ear made me shiver in his strong arms. My face became more and more red as I found myself captivated by his mere presence. If I were to gaze in a mirror, I was sure that my cheeks were blushing more than they ever had before.
答えてくれないとずっとこの体勢のままってことになるが、いいのか？な、正直に言うと俺はそれでも全然構わねえんだな。
Harada smiled impishly as his arms tightened forcefully around my fragile body. I leaned against his chest, feeling his heart pound against the small of my back, and suddenly I was wholly taken by this unknown sensation. so too did my heart begin to pound furiously. All of this was so foreign to me. Why had I felt so hot all of a sudden, but also natural, as if giving voice to instincts of which I had been unaware? I began to shrink into myself, and I answered Harada timidly, keeping my gaze fixed to the tatami below. It made me so happy. Happier than you could imagine. Harada chuckled smugly, patting the top of my head lightly with his hand.
ちょっと外に出てみるか。まだ寝るには早いしな。
He finally loosened his hold of me. Although the sun had just set, many of the shops had closed early, and only a few stragglers wandered nearby. The streets were conspicuously quiet, making me a little nervous as Harada and I walked together. Edo citizens were understandably concerned with the impending war with the Imperial Army, which led to many choosing to shut in for safety's sake.
もう3月だってのに、今日は妙に冷えやがるな。
You're right. It may have been better for us to wear our coats out tonight. Oh wait, hold on. I'm sorry, there was a phone call that required my attention. Harada-san stuck his arm out to me, grinning suggestively as he offered me his hand.
手貸せよ。繋いでやるから。その方があったかいだろう。
What? No, it's okay.
俺が繋ぎてんだよ。いいからほら。
Without waiting for my answer, Harada grabbed a hold of my hand abruptly, clasping it tight. Harada's Western attire was strange enough to attract the stares of any passerbys, but for us to hold each other's hands so boldly in the street was another statement entirely. Every now and then, some of the pedestrians we'd pass glanced at us peculiarly. Harada, however, seemed completely unbothered, wearing a smile from ear to ear as we walked. From the corner of my eye, I saw a mother walking with her child in our direction out of a bathhouse. Harada gazed kindly at the small child, whose tiny hand was wrapped precautiously around his mother's finger as he bounced up and down.
なあ、千鶴。お前、子供は好きか?
Why, yes. I like children quite a bit.
もし、俺とお前の子供が生まれるとしたら、男と女、どっちがいい?
His question completely blindsided me, Harada proving once more that he had mastered the art of making me blush. Although we had finally confided in one another about our true feelings, hearing him address our relationship so bluntly was an adjustment, one I had been bashfully learning how to navigate. I'd want a boy.
そうか? 最初は女の方が育てやすいって聞いたことがあるんだが。まあ、女の場合、手塩にかけて育ててもいずれよその男に取られちまうしな。そう考えたら男の方がいいかもな。
My reasons for wanting a son were a little different from what Harada had been suggesting. But even so, it warmed my heart that we could openly discuss our future, and more importantly, that Harada valued my say in the matter. I took solace in how beautiful this moment felt. So, when the war finally ends, where would you like to settle down, Harada? Do you think you'd want to return to the village where you grew up, Iyo? Iyo no Kuni, Harada's town of origin. It later became known as the Aichi Prefecture.
いや、あそこにはいい思い出もたくさんあるが、嫌な思い出も山ほどあるからよ。
Alright, so now going back home.
イオに戻るよりは、そうだな。海のそばで水平線を眺めながら暮らしてえかな。
Nah. The horizon? Harada tilted his head towards the darkening sky, speaking placidly as he gazed upwards.
新選組を出ることになった時、思ったんだ。
Oh, now I know why that sounds familiar, because that's the ending from Saito's. That's where we think Harada ended up. Somewhere far away on a goddamn horse. Near the water.
俺は土方さんみてえにでかい荷物を背負い込んで生きてはいけねえ。あんな風には絶対になれねえって。守るものはこの両腕に収まるものだけで十分だ。思想だなんだって七面倒くせえもののために戦うのも性に合わねえ。世の中もっと単純でいいんじゃねえかと思うんだ。絶対に失いたくねえものってそう多くはねえんだからな。
Harada.
とはいえ お前にそんな不便なところは嫌だって言われりゃ考え直さなきゃならねえけどよ。
Harada's answer was totally unexpected. What could I even say in response? I agree with you. I agree with you. Living somewhere in isolation with Harada, away from the petty conflicts waged between the shogunate and the imperial army, seemed so appealing. It was all I could ask for, really.
So お前が賛成してくれるならそれで決まりだな。将来は海のそばで二人で暮らすんだ。余計なことなんて何も考えずにな。
Harada and I clasped our hands tightly around one another, locking our fingers together. Hi. I nodded resolutely. Although much of what we were discussing was easier said than done, especially given the social climate, placing my faith in Harada was the easiest part of it all. That was a firework, if you could hear it. Some time ago, Harada sheepishly described to me what he considered to be his ideal life. A life with a family, spent with a woman that he loves, with whom he could raise a family in comfort. By spending the rest of my life with him, I was committing myself to making his dream a reality. As the constellations above us dazzled brilliantly, I whispered a silent promise made to myself. Oh, it's April. Oh, it's April. As we had long anticipated, the Imperial Army had arrived at Edo, its legions of soldiers occupying the outer perimeter to prepare for a large-scale assault. Unlike Kyo, Edo had the advantage of falling in the direct jurisdiction of the shogun. Lord Yoshinobu was all but deified by his citizens. Tensions were reaching their limits, and it wasn't long before all-out violence broke out between the Imperial Army and the Shogun's army of Bakushin. On April 11th, everything changed. After a scheduled diplomatic negotiation between the Sacho and the Shogunate was ordered to yield Edo Castle over to the Imperial Army without any resistance. Following directly afterwards, all of the Sekisho surrounding Edo were shut down by the Imperials. If you don't know what a Sekisho is basically a entry point, a checkpoint to check who you are and see if you're allowed in Edo or not, or you're a criminal, whatever that is. This severely hindered our ability to move in and around the city, giving us no chance but to remain within its borders until the occupation had ended.
Tak, まさかこんなことになっちまうとはな。幕府のお偉さん方が戦わずに城を明け渡しちまうとは思わなかったぜ。悪かったな、こんな目に遭わせちまって。
Oh, you don't have to apologize to me. I'm just worried about whether or not Nagakura and the others were able to escape Edo in time.
うまくいってくれねえと、俺たちがここに残った意味がねえだろ。
In order to aid Nagakura and the other members of the Seikyo Corps to escape, Harada covered them how he knew best, by leading the rear guard. Damn.
ひとまず北千住に関所があるはずだ。そこへ行ってみようぜ。
Good idea. Harada and I snuck carefully throughout Edo, which had been crawling with Imperial soldiers, hurrying through dim, narrow alleyways to reach North Senju. We made our way to the Sekisho, only to discover that it was well fortified beyond our expectations.
くそ、えらく警戒が厳重だな。どうやっても抜け出しそうにねえぞ。
What could we do? If the Imperial Army were to discover us here, then we'd be... My mind raced frantically, shuddering at the thought.
こいつは驚いた。まさかまだてめえらが江戸にいたとはな。
You're here and you're gonna help us out, aren't you? That voice.
てっきり他の連中と一緒にとっくに北へ向かってるもんだと思ってたんだが、ちょうどよかった。女にてめえに聞きてえことがあったんだ。
Shiranui quickly snatched my wrist, yanking me closely as he murmured eerily in my ear.
行動のじじいはどこにいる？隠すとためにならねえぞ。
I don't know. The last time I saw him was with you back at Kofu.
おい、その汚え手を離しやがれ。手首から先と永遠におさらばしてえんなら話は別だがな。
Shiranui paid Harada no mind, instead continuing to press the question.
本当に知らねえんだ。
I already told you. I don't know. Shiranui clicked his tongue and let go of my hand, tossing it aside without concern. Without another word, he spun around on his heel and stormed away from us. Mate! Father, what did he do now? Shiranui leapt atop a nearby flight of stairs, gazing down at me coldly from over his shoulder.
俺や風間が薩長の奴らの手助けをしてたのは知ってんだろ。ま、もう手伝ってやる義理もなくなったから奴らとは縁を切ったんだが、コードンの野郎、その隙をついて長州に自分を売り込みに行きやがった。
Alright, so this is the point where Kazuma, Amagiri, and Shiranui have given up their ties.
もちろん新型の羅刹どもを引き連れてな。羅刹は老害や偉人が持ち込んだ病と同じく人から人へ伝染していくもんだ。羅刹の血を飲んだ奴は羅刹になる。連中はそれを繰り返してこの国を羅刹だらけにするつもりなんだろう。
What? No! I had to steel myself to prevent from fainting. My lungs felt like they had been crushed. Soon I began to hyperventilate from panic.
羅刹どもには吸血衝動がある。奴らを生かすためには大量の血が必要だ。江戸で幕軍との戦が始まるだろうと踏んで、わざと町民を巻き込み、ついでに血をいただこうって算段だったんだろうが、幕府にも多少は頭が回るやつがいたらしいな。江戸での戦は起きなかった。そこで困ったのがコードだ。羅刹の部隊を賄えるだけの血を急遽別口で用意しなきゃならなくなった。
ってことはコードさんは今頃幕軍を追いかけてるさなかか。
バカ言ってんじゃねえよ。今から慌てて追ったって血なんて手に入らねえ。そんなのよりおあつらい向きの場所があるだろう。軍が北に向かっちまってガラ空きになってるところがよ。近々そこで大量の血を得られそうな事件が起こるはずだぜ。
At last, Shiranui's puzzling words came together, sending me into a horrified state. Harada's expression, too, shifted immediately to one of grave concern.
おい、どういうことだよ。まさか戦ですでに死んだ奴らの血を使うんじゃなく、羅刹を生かすためわざわざ戦を起こして死ぬ必要のねえ奴を殺して血を奪うつもりなのか。 そりゃ本末転倒だろ。侍ってのは女子供を守ってなんぼじゃねえか。
死なねえ兵を作り上げるためには必要な犠牲だって考えてるさ。
What I'm sure Koda hasn't even considered one thought in his brain for even 1 second is that once people run out, what is he supposed to do?
この戦に勝ってもそれで終わりじゃねえ。イギリス、フランス、ロシア。
Yeah, that's the other part.
新政府がこれから戦っていかなきゃならねえ敵は5万といるんだからな。
Harada's mouth was agape, incredulous in response to the terrifying possibility that Shiranui was describing.
それがてめえら長州の考えかよ。てめえらは新しい国を作りてんじゃなかったのか。そのために今までずっと戦ってきたんじゃねえのかよ。血を得るために何の罪もねえ女子供を殺して化け物だらけの軍隊を作って、そんなのがてめえらが今まで命がけで作ろうとしてきた新しい国だっていうのか。
そんなはずねえだろ。
Shiranui barked so intensely in response that Harada winced.
勘違いすんなよ。俺ははっきり言っててめえら人間が作る歴史になんて興味はねえ。ただあいつが俺が気に入ってた男が作りたかったのはそんな国じゃねえってことはわかる。
So, Kodo definitely started out much differently, and then he swung into this madness.
てめえに言われなくてもな。
Harada's eyes fluttered as he seemed taken aback by Shiranui's biting remark.
お前らまだ死にたくねえんだろ。ならさっさと江戸を出ろ。
ててえのは山々だが、関所は全部新政府軍に抑えられちまってるからな。
この俺様が脱出の手助けをしてやるってのはどうだ？
Harada and I gazed at one another inquisitively. In response to Shiranui's suggestion, I am right, he is here to help.
鬼のお前が俺たち人間のためにどうしてそこまでする？お前、俺たちを嫌ってるんじゃなかったのかよ。
Harada had a right to be skeptical. Although Shiranui had saved our skins on another occasion, namely back in Kofu, there were far more occasions in which he'd opposed us as an adversary alongside Kazuma in order to abduct me. But
何言ってやる。俺はな。
Shiranui suddenly cut himself short. He grimaced through gnashed teeth, and I could have sworn it seemed like he was fighting back the urge to cry.
身はたとえ武蔵の延べに朽ちぬともとどめおかまし大和魂。
I had never seen Shiranui, or any demon for that matter, so vulnerable, and he spoke very delicately with a sense of purpose.
なんだそいつは。誰かの自生の句か。
俺が気に入ってた男のお師匠さんが罪人として首切られる間際に残した句だってよ。その師匠とは面識なんてねえが、あいつがしょっちゅう繰り返すんだよ。覚えちまった。
Oh.
死んで体がなくなっちまった後でも大和魂とやらはいつまでも残るんだとよ。
Damn, he really made friends with a human!
だけどよ、魂って一体なんだ？死んじまった後に何かが残るなんてのは弱っちい人間が抱く都合のいい幻想じゃねえか。そんなもんを信じて信じなきゃ生きていけねえような生き物なんか好きになれるはずねえだろ。
Shiranui's voice quivered tearily. For a brief moment, he went silent as he gazed towards the bright cluster of stars shining above us.
おしゃべりはここまでだ。俺の手を借りるか、それともてめえらで何とかするか、さっさと決めやがれ。
どうする、千鶴。
I'd leave it up to you, Harada. I will leave it up to your discretion, Harada. It didn't feel fit to offer anything to this decision. I tested Harada to make the right choice, which in this moment seemed to be asking for Shiranui's aid.
ありがとよ、そう言ってくれて。少なくともこいつは嘘は言ってねえと思うし、俺たちにとっても悪い話じゃねえ。ここは素直に好意に甘えておこうぜ。
Okay, understood.
よし、そんじゃ始めるとするか。俺が関所の番をしてる奴らの注意を引きつける。その隙に通り抜けろ。
分かった。恩に着るぜ、白縫い。
よく覚えとけ。機会は一瞬しかねえからな。
The fuck? Shiranui slipped his pistol from out of his holster and lowered his legs to ready himself. Then, he pointed the gun's barrel towards the sky, firing 2 shots in quick succession. The crack of gunfire startled the nearby groups of Imperial soldiers, who came sprinting out in fear.
なんだ今の音は。貴様は確か高杉さんの護衛をしていた。
ご名答。高杉のいねえ長州にはまだ我慢できなくもなかったが、薩摩と手を組んだ上、あのジジイに乗せられてまがいもの頼みの新政府を作るだ。やってられねえぜ。悪いが俺はこの辺で抜けさせてもらうからよ。
知らぬい貴様。
小心者の桂によろしく言っといてくれよ。
待て、勝手な真似をさせるわけにはいかん。
The Imperial soldiers readied their weapons, charging as one group towards Shiranui.
なんだ、人間ごときが力ずくで俺様を止めようってのか。面白い。できるもんならやってみやがれ。
Shiranui's voice bellowed finally, and before he engaged the soldiers, he winked at Harada and me.
行くぞ、千鶴。
Harada grabbed a hold of my hand tightly. We sprinted as fast as we possibly could towards the Sekisho gate, staying low to avoid detection.
お前たち、どこへ行くつもりだ。
One of the nearby Imperial soldiers raised his katana out towards us threateningly.
おいおい、何をよそ見してやがるんだ。てめえの相手はこの俺だろうが。
Shiranui made short work of the soldier, his bullets ripping him into bloody shreds in front of me.
おい千鶴、同じ鬼同士のよしみで助けてやる。感謝しろよ。そして原田、てめえには一つ貸しだ。言っとくが高くつくからな。
ああ、分かってるさ。
Thank you for everything, Shiranui! We thanked Shiranui. Holy shit. Harada and I bowed towards Shiranui and rushed out of the gate, which was now totally unguarded.
ここまで来れば、さすがにあいつらも追いついては来ねえよな。
We had sprinted from the Sekisho in such a frenzy that my heart felt ready to burst in my chest. Harada and I were bent over, our hands clutching our knees as we inhaled deep, long gulps of air.
しかし、知らないやつ、さっき妙なことを言ってやがったな。行動さんが新型の羅刹を使って長州の奴らに取り入れようとしてるとかなんとか。
I remember. Was there anything either of us could do? Well, on one hand, it was nice to finally have a lead as to where we could find my father. A daunting path had been laid out before us. Nagakura was eagerly awaiting our rendezvous, and time was ticking before Aizu became little more than a war zone. If Mai and Harada's journey were to take us elsewhere, some place far away from the heart of the battle, then there was a chance that Harada and Nagakura would never see each other ever again. I couldn't bear to let it happen without consulting him. Harada. Just as I was about to voice my concern, Harada wrapped his arm around my shoulders and drew me into a tight embrace. It was so sudden that it was difficult for me to make out Harada's face in the thick darkness. Or maybe not. He pressed my face against his chest profusely, purposefully, holding me tighter than he had ever had before.
宇都宮に着いたら新八に事情を話して二人で江戸に戻ろう。
Well, we're going to Utsunomiya.
で、行動さんを説得するんだ。
Alright, so that's where we're going. But what about Nagakura?
いいから。そうしねえとお前、一人で戻るとでも言い出しかねねえだろ。新八のやつなら大丈夫だ。きっと分かってくれるさ。
I nodded, but in my heart, I couldn't answer him. Something in the way he spoke befuddled me. It was almost as if he had been working to conceive himself more than he was trying to No, I read that wrong. It was almost as if he had been working to convince himself more than he was trying to convince me. Is everything going to work out, Harada? He and Nagakura were thicker than blood, and their friendship stretched ever since their days in Shie Hall. I could see the lines of worry forming on his face. Okay, we'll get as far as we can in the next, 20 minutes. Let's see how far we go. Oh, we're in Utsunomiya. Yeah. Harada and I traveled in great haste to Utsunomiya, reuniting safely with Nagakura upon her arrival.
Oh, Sono, Chizuru-chan. 二人とも無事だったんだな。
見ての通りだよ。この俺がそう簡単に死ぬはずがねえだろうが。
まあ、そりゃそうか。なんせ腹を切っても死ななかったくらいだもんな。新政府軍の奴らも江戸を落としたことで天狗になってやがるだろうが、その鼻っ柱を叩き折ってやろうぜ。奴らの驚く顔が目に浮かぶね。もう俺たちは鳥羽伏見の時とは違うんだからな。
Nagakura beamed with confidence, which perhaps had been the influence of his new techniques. The Seikyo Corps had been broadening his horizons.
とりあえず長旅で疲れてるだろ。宿を用意してあるから休んどけよ。
いや、疲れてはいねえから気は使わねえでくれ。それよりお前に話してえことがあるんだが。
ああ、話？そんなの後でいいじゃねえか。彼女も長旅で疲れてるだろうし。さあ、千鶴ちゃん行こうぜ。一番綺麗な部屋を用意してあるからな。
Aww. Thank you. After offering him my thanks, Nagakura became giddy with excitement. He had practically been pushing us through the front door. Later that evening, Nagakura came bursting into our room, and in his hand was a decanter full of a clear liquid.
ほらほらほら、見ろよ佐野。奮発して高い酒買ってきてやったぜ。かあ、 あれってどこまで優しいんだろうな。こんな素晴らしい酒を独り占めせずお前に飲ましてやるなんて。
あのな、新八。酒を飲む前に話が。
バカ野郎、何言ってやがんだよ。まずは口の滑りをよくしねえと始まらねえだろ。
Nagakura was bouncing off the walls more excited than I had ever seen him before. Why are you so happy? I interpreted it as his way of celebrating the fact that Harada and I had made safe passage en route to Utsunomiya. Watching Nagakura buzz with glee made it hard for Harada to turn him down a second time.
そうだな。そんじゃ一杯だけ。
With a little more sake in his belly, Nagakura began opening up, and the pace of his voice quickened from when he started his sentence to when it finally ended.
そういえばさ、まだ市営館にいた頃、みんなで吉原に遊びに行った時のこと覚えてるか？
お？いつのことだそりゃ。
ほら、近藤さんが初めてくっついてきた時のことだよ。
You what?
やっぱりさ、ああいう店に行くと姉ちゃん方はみんな土方さんとかお前のところに行っちまうだろ。男は見た目が10割だからな。そんな中、近藤さんも内心モテてって思ってたんだろうな。何を思ったか、自分の口にげんこつ入れる宴会芸始めやがってよ。
No way they actually mentioned that. So this is true. In the book that I've read, and I think in some other places as well, they mention how Kondo-san would fit his entire fist into his mouth for entertainment purposes. It's stupid, and I can't believe it's here as well.
ああ、思い出した。大受けだったな、ありゃ。いろんな意味で。
そうそう、姉ちゃんたちゲラゲラ笑っててさ、モテてるっていうより笑われてんだ。だけど近藤さん、姉ちゃんたちにキャーキャー言われたのが嬉しかったみたいで、顔あからめてやがったんだよな。
いや、笑われてることには気づいてたと思うぜ。ああいう店で姉ちゃん方に指さされて笑われても軽く受け流せる人なんだ。あの人にはそういうとこがあった。
だな。あと、あれも覚えてるか？土方さんが俳句をこっそり書き留めてた口調を掃除のやつが見つけてきて、それがまたすげえ下手くそで、みんなで大笑いしてたとこにちょうど土方さんが戻ってきてさ。
You're somehow still alive.
あったあった。あの人のあんな顔見たのは後にも先にもあれっきりだな。
Harada and Nagakura eagerly traded stories of their youth, reminiscing in the past as they whittled away the liquor from the decanter, one shot at a time. Most of the stories came from the earlier days at Shiei Hall. It was Kondo-san this, or Hijikata-san that, or Okita this. Each story was recounted so vividly, revealing tidbits of information about people from whom I had grown to deeply admire. It almost felt like I was there. Somehow, not only had they told each the tale convincingly, but without a hint of negativity too. They clinked their glasses every 5 minutes, toasting to the memories of what used to be, which seemed totally at odds to where they left off with Kondo-san. Soon Nagakura's speech became slurred, and he blinked one eye at a time as he looked back at Harada. He became drunk, alright.
で、今日は何があったんだ？お前がそういう飲み方するときって大抵何かあったときだろ。
Yeah, that's true. I'm gonna guess it's the other way we're going with this. As an outsider, the interaction was what I expect when two friends were connected after a long period of absence, basking in each other's company, but Harada knew Nagakura well enough to spot the difference. It's gonna be what I think it is, isn't it? Nagakura fell silent. Hi, Isaac! He toyed clumsily with his cup in between his fingers, watching what remained of his sake slush inside of the cup for a moment until...
ゆうべさ、近藤さんの夢見たんだ。あの岩みてえな顔で腕組みしながらずっと黙っててさ。夢の中で俺、あの人に言いてえことをいつもの調子で言いまくってたんだよ。近藤さん、俺の言葉が聞こえてんだか聞こえてねえんだかわかんねえ感じで何も言わずに座ってたんだが、最後にさ、いきなり頭を下げてすまなかったって一言だけ言って、そのままどこかに行っちまったんだ。目覚めた時、俺もしかしたらもう近藤さんに会えねえんじゃねえかって思っちまってさ。おかしいよな、てめえの都合で飛び出したのにどうして今さらあんな夢を見るんだよ。
Nagakura looked just as ready to burst into tears as he was into laughter, and without another word, he gulped down the remaining sake from his cup. Oh geez, yeah, I hope nothing catches on fire over there with the fireworks. I've been hearing some little bits of fireworks over here, but nothing too major yet. That'll be tomorrow night, which thank God I'm not streaming. I watched their entire conversation unfold from off to the side, silent and sober. The more inebriated Nagakura became, the more I realized why he had greeted us so fervidly. For Nagakura, Harada was all that tethered him to the memories of their past. Everyone else had either split off in a different direction or was no longer with us.
なんだかんだで比叡館の頃から一緒にいるのってお前だけになっちまったろ。
だな、腐れ縁もいいとこだ。
そりゃお互い様だってよ。だけどさ、せっかくここまで来たんだし、言ったら
Please don't tell me he's falling asleep. Nagakura's face was completely flushed with color, and he fell to the floor mid-sentence, snoring as he entered a deep, drunken stupor. Yeah, I figured.
相変わらず無茶な酔い方だぜ。ガキじゃねえんだから、もう少し綺麗に飲めねえもんかな。
Harada rolled his eyes from secondhand embarrassment as Nagakura's snoring filled the room. Even as Harada poked fun at Nagakura's boorish behavior, there was a very genuine feeling of love between them, one that could never be broken. Today, Nagakura did all of the talking and Harada did all of the listening. The rhythm of their conversation suggested that they could just easily have switched roles. A close rapport developed over years of sharing drinks and stories.
千鶴、面倒かけて悪いが、こいつを部屋に運んで布団敷くのを手伝ってくれるか。廊下にでも転がしておきてえとこだが。明日目覚ました時にギャーギャー言われるのも鬱陶しいからな。
Ooh. Together we hoisted the unconscious Nagakura on our shoulders to his room and tucked him in.
やれやれ、話すきっかけを見失っちまったな。あの野郎、話の腰を片っ端から折りやがって。悪いな。明日こそはあいつとちゃんと話をするからよ。
Please, there's nothing to apologize for. While it was true that there were still pressing matters to which we needed to attend, that sadly Nagakura had become too drunk to discuss. To some extent, I knew that Harada hadn't wanted to sink the mood of their conversation either. I, just as much as Harada, wanted to savor what time we may have had left with Nagakura. Or at least, this was the impression I gathered from the melancholic expression on Harada's face.
新八のやつね。せっかくの高い酒だってのにあんなこと言いやがるから全然酔えなかったぜ。
Talk through the whole thing? Harada paused for a moment, curling his lips in hesitation, before he expanded upon his point. He gazed up at the ceiling, inhaling a deep breath as he shut his eyes. He ran his thin, coarse fingers through his hair. Finally, he opened up his eyes, speaking as though he were confessing something to me.
実はさ、俺も昨べ近藤さんの夢を見たんだ。
Gee, okay.
新八と違って話はできなかったが、何か言いたそうにずっと黙ってたな。二人で似たような夢を見るなんてえらい偶然だよな。虫の知らせってやつか。
Yeah, about that omen.
しかも夢の内容を考えると嫌な予感しかしねえ。
It was tough for me to offer any input, and instead I lowered my gaze towards the floor. Nagakura had his own reasons for leaving, but Harada's only reason for abandoning his life with the Shinsengumi, including everyone he had cared about, was me. If Harada were still with the Shinsengumi, then perhaps none of the existential problems that he currently faced would have been a problem for him. If I were an ordinary girl, then Harada would have had no reason to uproot his entire life, leaving behind his beloved group of friends and his position just to protect me. Now I had to put Harada in the position of abandoning his best friend, all because of my selfish needs. How crushing was it for him to bid farewell to arguably the most important person in his life. Doubly so for Nagakura, who had no idea that his best friend would soon embark on a life-or-death mission.
お前そろそろ休んだ方がいいぜ。女の足でここまで来たんだ。疲れてるだろ。
I'm fine.
明日には江戸にとんぼ帰りの予定なんだ。休んでおかねえと持たねえぞ。
Harada's resolve was stronger than I anticipated. Come hell or high water, he was determined to lead the two of us back into Edo. You're right. I'll get some sleep. Harada nodded curtly toward me, and I quietly slinked towards the direction of my bedroom. Carefully navigating the dimly lit hallway, I passed by Nagakura's room. He had quite a bit to drink, and I wondered to myself whether or not the alcohol had left his system. Out of concern, I suddenly poked my head into his room when... My head bumped into Nagakura, who was, to my surprise, had one of his feet out of the door.
おっと、悪い、千鶴ちゃん。
Oh, no, please don't apologize. It was rude of me to enter unannounced.
つうか俺、どうして自分の部屋にいたんだ？もしかして酔いつぶれちまったのか？
You seem to be having so much fun drinking and reminiscing with Harada. I assumed that you were just excited to see each other?
かあ、情けねえな。たったあれっぽっちの酒で潰れちまうなんて。
Don't be. If anything, all it shows is how much fun you and Harada had together.
まあ、それももちろんあるんだけどよ。またあいつと戦えるって思ったら、体がうずうずしてきちまってさ。
Antsy?
佐野はとにかく強いからよ。背中を預けた時、あいつほど安心できるやつってのもそうそういねえからな。新選組を抜けた今、あいつと一緒にどんな戦い方ができるのか楽しみで仕方ねえんだ。
Nagakura's eyes beamed with enthusiasm. Ever since he was a boy, Nagakura fostered ambitions to become a renowned warrior, leaving his domain to dedicate his life to tireless training. For Nagakura to admit, without hesitation, how much he relied upon Harada was telling. A stunning realization hit me. There was no way I could bear to take Harada away from his best friend on the battlefield. It was a feeling that arose from the very bottom of my soul.
頭痛くなってきたからちょっと水飲んでくるぜ。あんまり夜更かしすんなよ、千鶴ちゃん。
Nagakura poked me with his elbow in a joking manner, then stumbled his way into the hallway towards the kitchen. Thank you, Nagakura. Thank you for helping me realize. Because of you, I realize what needs to be done. This is how we're ending it. Say goodbye to Harada. After Nagakura fumbled awkwardly into the darkness, I turned around to head back to Harada's room. I'm ending it here. I am leaving you guys on a cliffhanger. I am leaving that on a cliffhanger. I sense the need that after this point I'm going to be needing the ability to yell. I sense it in my soul, and it's now 10 o'clock and I don't want to scream. I'm leaving that for respect of neighbors for now. I know I went through the last time, but that last time I had confidence. Today I don't have that much confidence to go over that. So I'm gonna leave y'all on a cliffhanger. Because I'm just that mean, I guess. Anyway, Friday, 3 p.m. EST. We are gonna come back, finish this up, and then start Yamazaki's route. That's what we're gonna do. And since Yamazaki is the last route, I am going to be acting all of it once again to refresh our minds of every single scene, even though I've been kind of summarizing most of the time. And then after that, we'll be doing Chizuru's route, which is really just the tail end of Saito's route in Kyoto Winds, and then straight into Edo Blossoms. And then we'll do all the game overs and unrequited loves and all of that. So, with that being said, please drink water. Have a good day or night. Don't die because you don't drink water. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.